You might have seen some rumours about a smartphone being released with not one, not two, but 3 cameras on its rear. And as it turns out, there isn't just one phone coming out with this design. Let's get right into it. A leaked roadmap from Huawei Mobile Israel has shown that the company is planning to release no less than 3 phones in the flagship P series range in 2018 alone. The P, the P Plus, and the P Lite. The roadmap does say that Q2 2018 is when to expect them. But don't forget, we are talking about Huawei Israel here. The same chart also says that Q1 2018 is when the Mate 10 Pro arrives, whereas we've had that phone from early on in Q4 2017. So more than likely, we could be seeing in European and American regions at least, these phones in Q1 2018. And many journalists and media publications have sort of assumed that because Huawei released the P8, then the P9, then the P10, that the next phone would be the P11, which to be honest is a pretty fair assumption. But Rami Hassan, who is in charge of distribution in Israel, has reportedly actually confirmed the next Huawei smartphone is going to be the P20, perhaps an indication of a huge leap forward compared to the more iterative upgrade that we saw between the P9 and the P10. We've actually also had a few potential leaked schematics of the P20 and the P20 Plus, and there are a few inconsistencies between them. They do, however, share the idea that both of these phones are going to come with a triple camera setup. The P20 looks to have a horizontal setup, whereas the P20 Plus seems to be vertical, which on one hand seems like a bit of an odd way to do things, but actually that is exactly what we saw with the iPhone X and the iPhone 8s. The slightly lower end, as it were, iPhone 8s had horizontal setups, whereas the 10 had vertical. So maybe this is just another way to encourage people to upgrade to the Plus model. Notice also that both of them are borrowing some design characteristics from the Mate 10 and the Mate 10 Pro. That iconic stripe that almost highlighted the camera modules in a subtle but really pleasant looking way seems to have returned. And that consistency does add a little bit of credibility to the leaks. Okay, but all of this raises one really obvious question. We know that smartphones can use dual cameras for depth perception, portrait modes, as well as lossless zooming, but why would a smartphone need 3 cameras? As far as I can see, there are 3 potential benefits. One potential option here is more detail. You might have seen the Lite L16, it's almost like a beta product that was released recently, to a lot of hype. Whether the end product turned out well, the ambition at least was that with 16 different image sensors on it, it could capture photos at the same time at different focal lengths and stitch these images together to form a higher resolution image. And the same idea could be applied to the Huawei P20. Some of the rumours that have circulated around have suggested that the phone could take 40 megapixel images, but it does seem unlikely that the phone is going to carry a single 40 megapixel sensor, so image stitching seems like a pretty good way that the phone could reach images of this resolution. The L16, with its 16 different sensors, could reach a resolution of 52 megapixels, so it can be done. It could also result in potentially better depth effects. The Huawei P10, for example, with its dual camera setup, was pretty good. When you're taking portraits of people from a distance, they'd be quite convincing. But zooming in on those portraits and you would notice that the edge detection was often a little bit off. So having now 3 sensors in a horizontal or vertical array could essentially give the camera even more depth information, which allows the software to better calculate what is the foreground and what is the background, and at what point does it transition between the two. So portraits could become a lot more organic looking. Another interesting idea, which would make a lot of sense as well, is different lenses for different types of shots. Huawei was widely criticized for sticking with the monochrome lens, which it strongly believes in because for the real purists, the real artists among you guys, it offers a really interesting photography experience. But at the same time, a lot of people really liked what Samsung offered with the Galaxy Note 8 or LG with the G6, in that it had a telephoto lens and a wide angle lens, which allowed people to click one shot and for the phone to take 2 separate photos, one capturing more of the background and one capturing less. With 3 lenses, Huawei could potentially offer both features. It could have a telephoto lens, a monochrome lens, and it could have the wide angle, which would give people a lot of flexibility when it comes to the types of photos they could take. We've also gleaned a little bit of information from the user agent profile of the phone, which is a document that the company has to file before ending up producing these phones, and this suggests a 1080p display. Bear in mind though that the same thing happened with the Mate 10 smartphones. The document reported a 1080p display, but not that the fact that only one of the Mate 10 phones actually had the 1080p, and that the other one was actually 2K. So I think it's likely the P20 will have a 1080p display, same for the P20 Lite, but the P20 Plus will give the company an option at least to stay competitive in this arena. Up against the Galaxy S9, the LG G7, HTC's next flagship phone, it's very likely that these phones will have at least 2K resolutions, so you can't really stick with a 1080p one on all the devices. But at the same time, offering this range to consumers and the option for a 1080p display also makes a lot of sense. There will be consumers who want those high-end P-series features, but at the same time who can't really tell the difference between a 1080p and a 2K panel, and would instead prefer the extra battery life that perhaps the standard P20 phone would have. Now, from these schematics that we've seen, which may or may not be 100% accurate, it's looking like the standard P20 phone is going to have about an 82 to an 85% screen-to-body ratio. Pretty high considering the phone also has a front-facing fingerprint scanner. The Pro looks very impressive with an iPhone X-like notch and a slightly squarer aesthetic to the standard P20. It looks like a phone very much fit for 2018. And just judging by the schematics, if there's no extra body that we can't see on these images, we could be looking at 90% screen-to-body ratio, which, if it was released now, would be a world record. Okay, so nothing here is finalized, and the fact that there are inconsistencies here shows that at least some people who claim to have information on this have got it wrong. Nonetheless, we can say that Huawei has their ear to the ground. They are listening to what consumers say. They've got a big upcoming smartphone launch, and it's coming soon. So that's all reason to be excited. If you haven't already seen our video on the Samsung Galaxy Z or the Samsung Galaxy X, two other very exciting upcoming phone projects, check them out, I'll leave them as a card above. With that being said, my name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'm signing out.